up YouTube? On this next video here, now that you know what gamification is, I want to teach you actually what gamification is not. One of the biggest things that you're going to get is that when you say, hey, I'm going to gamify my class, I'm going to try some of these gamification skills, people are going to say immediately, A, my kid is not a gamer, or my son or daughter is not a gamer. B, even though we're still in 2016, they're going to say, my daughter isn't into games, and quite often it's about girls, which I'm going to totally trash that argument in a second. And third, they're going to say, I don't want any more screen time for my kids, or even sometimes administrators or colleagues will say that. And I want to kind of squash those three myths. Alright, so the first myth about gamification is that A, you got to be a gamer to be interested in gamification. Not true at all. What we think about when we think about gamers is we think about kind of people that look like this. We think about kind of these people that have no friends, they're socially awkward, they kind of hang out in basements alone, and this is kind of like this old, early 1990s thought of gamers. Games have evolved so much since that time. So squashing myth number one. If you're not a gamer, that's fine, because what motivates people about games is often the reward, it's the constant encouragement, it's the working in teams. Actually, multiplayer games are among the most popular games on the market, so teamwork is actually a huge factor. It's not this isolation thing that people think it is. Also, what's really important to understand is that these games, when they're created and designed properly, draw you back in. And they draw you back in by all of these different types of tricks and tips that game designers have come up with over time. So if you are not a gamer, it doesn't impact your ability to be successful in a gamified classroom at all. Those draws of feedback, reward, teamwork, cards, creativity, kind of sandbox games, which kind of gives that open choice to the player, are all input in a correctly designed gamified classroom. So myth number one, squashed. If you are not a gamer, you're totally fine in gamification. Alright, so the second myth I always hear in the kind of couple years I've been doing this gamification thing is that, well, I have a daughter and girls don't play video games, and that means that she's going to fail your course. And that kind of drives me insane. Statistically speaking, guys and girls are almost on a 50-50 playing of games. The Electronics Society kind of does this global poll where they test the impacts of video games and the video game market to see how much we spend, who games, and the age brackets they're gaming. So if you kind of look at this, you're going to see that girls are almost at a 50-50 split. It's 2016, people, and you got to realize that girls and guys game. And a huge factor behind this, of course, is our cell phones. Mobile gaming has really changed the platform of gaming, because now you have a video game system in your pocket. So to go back to myth number one, not being a gamer, actually again, and now being a girl, which kind of what people think is like the be-all end-all of not success in this, which I again hate. We are honored and rewarded the same way as humans. We like to feel that we're doing well and that we're recognized and that we have some say and some opinion in what we do. So girls succeed actually more than guys in this. My current leaderboard has much more of a female demographic than a male on it at the moment. They really gravitate towards this. So myth number two, being a girl and not successful in gamification, totally a myth. Alright, so the third myth we have right now, and this is the one that's most commonly asked, is I'm tired of screen time, I don't want my kids playing any more games. An actually true defined gamified classroom and a successfully implemented gamification in your courses involves as little or as much technology as you want. I run mine with actually very little technology. So the myth is that you are going to create some sort of app where you're just going to put them on an iPad or a phone or a computer screen and they're just going to play this game in order to learn the content instead of you teaching. Totally a myth. What you're actually doing when you gamify your classroom, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, is creating this immersive environment, this story and this theme that the kids buy into. And as they buy into this, they become enveloped into it, almost entrenched, and they want to become part of it. They become invested in the characters and things, and they want to really help people out and solve and push themselves further than they've ever have typically in kind of a standard classroom. So you're not actually going out and getting games and then saying, okay, play this, and I'm just going to sit in front of the room on my desk and check email or something. Totally a myth. Now, one thing to actually think of is that most games that we use as educators are actually not good at teaching kids how the skills that they're trying. I think back to games like the original kind of Math Blaster and things like that I played growing up. And I mean, I'm 30, so I'm looking, early 1990s at this point in time. They didn't teach me anything about math. What they taught me was memorization. So I knew when I saw 2 plus 2, I knew it was 4. I didn't know that 2 plus 2 equaled 4. I knew that when I saw the symbol 2 and then symbol 2, it equaled 4. So it was memorization. So I didn't actually improve any sort of math skills, whether it was addition, subtraction, or division, playing these games as a kid. It actually hindered my math, in my opinion, because I didn't learn what I was doing. I was just really good at memorizing patterns that I recognized in games. So, certain games are not actually designed really well to teach you a skill. They're just really good at memorization. A phenomenal iPad game you can actually get, though, is called Dragon Box, to just kind of illustrate the difference. When you play traditional games, like I said, it's typically a pattern. You see something and you know to just hit the keyboard, and you're not thinking. It's just about quick reflexes, essentially. Now, Dragon Box is a phenomenal app that was designed by a mathematician who actually thinks that school is a prison and doesn't enjoy school. He thinks it squashes the creativity of math. So his response was to create a game where you are learning math without learning it. And the concept is you have a little dragon inside of a box, and he peeks his head out and he wants to eat, but he'll only eat when he's alone. So you have to remove everything from the screen. Now, removing everything from the screen is actually solving algebraic equations. So if you have a black tile and a white tile, that represents a negative and a positive, and when you drag them together, they cancel each other out. If you have a glowing little portal, that means it's 0, and you can click it and the 0 is eliminated. There's other things such as integers and variables and things like that. And when you play this game, what you actually are learning is algebraic equations and skills without being told that that is what you're learning. So it's a brilliantly designed game because it masks the learning inside. So myth number 3, to squash that, you're not actually giving kids constant screen time in which to learn content in your classroom. What you're actually doing is creating this immersive environment, as I explained in my previous video. So, myth number 3, squash. So the last thing I want to mention in today's episode is gamification is often tied in with a term called GBL, or game-based learning. And I want to make sure that you guys realize that there's a complete difference between the two. As I've mentioned before, gamification is this overlay on top of your curriculum that you integrate all your work to meet the story or the narrative that you create. Game-based learning is what I alluded to in myth number 3. It's actually using a game to learn a skill. But again, finding those games is difficult because they're not often designed by educators. They're often designed by people who are in the game industry out kind of to make money. So they're not really emphasizing so much that education component of it. So I want you to realize that when people tell you, hey, you're gamifying your class, I don't know if that's going to work. A, it's going to work. It works extremely well when you design it properly. And B, when they tell you, oh, that means you're going to be playing games in your class, how are kids going to learn? You must be lazy as a teacher. Tell them that that's actually referred to as game-based learning, and that is not what you're doing. Now, can you integrate game-based learning into a gamified classroom? Absolutely. I created this battle board, for example, in my classroom, where it's a game I invented piecing together other games that exist. And what the kids do is they actually have incentive in which to do well on the work that they're assigned in order to get some bonus and some extras in the game. So when I look at it, I can incorporate definitely some GBL into my classroom, but it's an element. It is not gamification. So I just want to make sure that we have that clarified. Next week, we're going to talk about theme, and I'm going to give you guys a tour of my classroom. Until next time.